I've been collecting pretty much my entire life at this point. Since I was a kid, would get, the Kenner Gargoyle figures or all the Power Rangers, and I would want to have the whole team and that kind of stuff. And I think that kind of created the collecting bug. And to this point now, like, I collect a lot of toys, I collect vinyl records, I collect posters, I collect art books, trading cards, like kind of everything. Anything that can be collected will be collected in this household. My name is Kyle Wadaga, and I'm a toy designer and collector. As far as toys goes, I'm big into Godzilla and Kaiju and some Power Ranger stuff because it's kind of adjacent with Tokusatsu. And I'm also big into Turtles and DC and Star Wars and Marvel Legends and just a little bit of everything. Like I said, anything that can be collected will be collected. And it helps a little bit, at least in my own brain, that having this career of toy design helps me justify, like, oh, I need this. I gotta understand how the companies are doing it now, like what we need to do and how do we bring these figures into the modern era and that kind of stuff. You gotta keep up with everybody. And I don't think anyone's buying that, but I think it's, it helps me at least. I had toys as a kid, but I remember specifically getting into toy collecting on my own right around when I was like 12 or 13. I went to Walmart and I spent my allowance on Toy Biz Marvel Legends Beast. That big bulky one that had like the hinge jaw and like came with like the comic book or whatever, and that was the first like iteration and time that I remember like, oh, like I'm buying this for myself, I'm collecting this. And then I eventually started collecting the whole team, and I loved it because you could read the books and understand who these characters were even more. Like I knew who Beast was because I watched like X-Men the animated series and stuff because I'm a child of the 90s, so we all watch Fox Kids. But that was the first time I like read the book and like really understood who this guy was. It was just a cool figure. I still think that's one of the best Beast action figures out there. I think it all ties to nostalgia, like, which is cliche, but it's kind of the answer that everybody has, because it's the real reason is, these are characters and properties and brands that, I really connected with as a kid. They bring me back to a time where, it was just me and the Power Rangers or me and Godzilla, and it certainly helps now that I've worked on a lot of these properties. And so, I collect this stuff because you gotta know what everybody else is doing, but also because, you love this stuff. And I think that's part of it as well. Like that connection from childhood creates like a genuine love for the brands and the IPs and stuff. And like, there's certain stuff that it's like, you'll pick it up and just be like, oh, this is just cool. Like I like Spawn, when you mentioned Spawn, I like Spawn a lot, but he's not like, he's not like my favorite guy, but I have him in there because he looks really cool. It's a good looking figure. I'm definitely trying to get into like less of like, oh, I want this because it looks cool. I think everybody goes through this phase of like, I need to focus on what my collection is and what it means to me. And so you got to figure out the things that are like really important to you. And so I feel like I'm slowly distilling it to that where, Turtles, Rangers, Godzilla, Batman, Marvel, that kind of stuff is like really where I want to be, even Star Wars too. So these details behind me here are like by section technically. Like this is Marvel, this is Power Rangers, this is Turtles, that's supposed to be Star Wars and then DC. But then I've already started breaking the rules a little bit of, where stuff goes. Like I have a Papa Emeritus here in the section with Marvel. And then I have, some Star Wars stuff in the DC section. It's just kind of all over the place, but that's the intent. I try and keep stuff together like by brand. But even I have organizations like within the brands, like this is the Marvel shelf, but I have like a just pure Black Panther shelf. And like same with Star Wars, I have like just a pure Darth Vader shelf as well. And then like Rangers, it's like, here's just Rangers and like their vintage toys. Here's just villains, like that kind of stuff. But then like in other cases, it's like broader categories, like this big case here, it's by row. So top row is all test shots and prototypes, toy production stuff. So there's a lot of unreleased stuff in there. The shelf right below that is heavy metal, and then glow in the dark, and then I think it's like vintage properties, so like Turtles and Thundercats, and then like Tokusatsu with like Rangers and Godzilla, and then like a bunch of different colorways. It's all recolors and Transformers on that bottom one. And then the very, very bottom one is just kind of like all over the place. The thing about your collection is that it's always a work in progress. So I'm going through some periods of transition with all of this stuff, and like I said, trying to figure out how to focus it all and all that, but it's a lot like by property, by brand, and then there's subcategories inside of that, and there's no logic to it that makes sense to anyone other than myself. And that's all that matters, because it's my collection. So, I'm going to display how I want to do it. My friends and family, as much as they make fun of me for my collecting, I also know that they're supportive. I know that they know that it makes me happy. It's what I choose to spend my time in and invest my time in and my money in. I think it certainly helps that I've found a way to make this addiction that I have part of my career. I think if I was doing something else and was doing this, I might be getting a little bit more sideways glances than I do now. But my parents were always supportive, as long as it was still in my room, and my partner is super supportive as long as it's in here. But she, my live-in partner has also been getting more and more used to the idea of collecting stuff herself. Like she loves dogs, and so anytime I get a dog accessory or a dog action figure in a set of something, I give her that dog, and so she has her own dog display somewhere else in the house. All of my stuff has to stay in this office, but her dog display can be out where other people can see it, because I guess dog collections are normal. But I'm grateful that she's supportive of it all, and I can see the spark starting in her as well, which is super fun. I was able to kind of break into the toy industry a little while ago. I've been in it for about probably like 10 or 11 years now. I originally went to college for illustration, and I wanted to be a comic book artist. I wanted to do comic book covers specifically. But then I realized that there's not a ton of money in that, and it's super difficult and competitive to get into, even though there's no money to compete for. And so I was looking for something to pivot to, and a friend of mine was having a party at his house where they were playing Magic the Gathering, and he's like, oh, you should come over. And so I go over and we're hanging out, and his roommate at the time was a guy who was lead designer at a game studio called Cryptozoic Entertainment, which was super cool, and they were looking for interns. And so I talked to him, I got the internship, and worked on that game for a little while. And while I was there, I sat next to a guy who was beginning to work on the first projects of a collectibles department. And I'd always collected stuff for years, but for whatever reason, it didn't click in my head that that's someone's actual job till I was out of college. I'm oh yeah, somebody has to make those, and somebody makes money making action figures and toys and stuff. None of that computed until I met this guy named Jeff. And so my internship ended, but then I started working immediately with him doing freelance on some DC figures, some blind box figures, and did that for about a year and maybe a year, and then they brought me in full time, and that's kind of how the toy job whole thing started. I just kind of Forrest Gumped my way into it, which is fun. Everybody I've ever talked to in the toy industry will tell you that that's kind of no one ever plans to be here. I feel like everybody kind of just falls into it, and they're just oh, I'm here now. But now you don't want to leave because it's amazing. It's so cool. What a day in the life of a toy designer looks like. When I'm at a studio, usually you commute in, or if you're working from home, you hop on to your email, check your email, see what you got to do, look at your assignments, and then you're either researching the next project, so gathering reference, watching old TV shows, watching movies, whatever the source material is supposed to be, or you're actively drawing, designing, thinking about how the figure is going to look. Typically you do turnarounds where it's front, side, back, or three-quarter view sometimes. Depends on the studio. Different studios like to do stuff a little bit different. Everybody makes toys their own way. But yeah, so you'll do all that stuff, but then I also did a lot of art direction, and so I would work with sculptors online, in person, doing, giving them direction, giving them drawovers, showing them how I think it should look. Basically taking the vision that I have up here and then helping them execute it in 3D space. We would also work with the factories as well overseas. And so There's all kinds of things that you could really be doing. Like, you don't really end up doing the same thing each day because there's so many parts to the toy process, and a lot of the time you're working on multiple projects at once that are all at various stages. Like, you know, I can be drawing this figure one day, but then the same day, oh, the factory needs some feedback about how this elbow joint is going to work or whatever, and so you switch over to that really quick. And so it's a very fast-paced environment where you're working on multiple things at once, but still trying to like keep the train moving and get that that action figure to the finish line from concept to collectible in your hand. Some of the work that I'm the most proud of is stuff that's like very personal to me. Like, I got to work on a Godzilla figure that was an exclusive for Comic-Con, I think 2 years ago now, that was inspired by Art Adams and his legendary run on the Dark Horse Godzilla comics in the 90s. That run of comics, specifically that very first issue where he's like coming out of the water and he's got blood all over his face and says he's thirsty for blood. That's like one of the very first comic books I ever got as a kid. My grandfather gave that to me because he saw it at a shop one day and just thought it was cool. And that issue specifically, I kind of knew who Godzilla was, but it was like I got it and I read it, just it opened my imagination, and that's when I started drawing. I started just copying those pages and stuff, and so like that comic specifically is very important to me and like very like pivotal to like me having this whole career and probably this collection as well. And so I got to like make an action figure based off of that, and then meet Art Adams. I asked him if he would sign the action figure that I did of his comic, and he was like, yeah, absolutely, like as long as you sign mine. And I was like, oh my god, like my heart. It was super cool. So that's definitely a career highlight. But then, you know, getting to work on bands, like heavy metal bands that I've worked on as well, like Ghost, which is one of my favorite bands, or Lemmy from Motorhead, Cliff Burton, King Diamond, like all of the heavy metal music stuff that I got to do when I was working at Super 7 is like an absolute dream come true, just because I don't think anybody would have guessed that, you know, there was going to be action figures of King Diamond when he first started playing stuff in the 80s. But you know, here we are. I think I worked on like 6 or 7 King Diamond figures, which is wild to think about. Same thing with Lemmy, I think I did like 4 or 5, or I think I'm in double digits of Slayer figures, which is wild. So all the heavy metal stuff has been great. Turtles, Power Rangers, like, I don't know, everything I've gotten to work on, like, I weirdly have had some kind of personal connection to. It's the cheap answer, but it's like, oh, I sort of like them all. Like, I'm very proud of all of them, but like, I don't know. First thing that comes to mind is that Art Adams Godzilla, for sure. Never in a million years would I have imagined as a child that my work would be in a big box retailer like Target or Walmart or whatever. What's funny is that the very first thing that I ever worked on was like a blind box series of DC Bombshell characters, you know, like little baby ones. And the first place they went to was Walmart, which was like a full circle kind of crazy moment of like, you know, like that kid who bought his Toy Biz Marvel Legend from Walmart now has stuff that he worked on shelf in Walmart. Is like, it doesn't get old at all. It's like, and the importance of it is not lost on me anytime it happens. It's pretty wild. I've been doing some freelance stuff between jobs, but I'm looking for the next big opportunity, obviously. And I have connected with some bands locally and not so locally that have been wanting action figures in a similar vein. And so this happened actually about 2 years ago. I started working with a band called Night Demon because they wanted to have action figures made, but no company would take them because they didn't think they could sell enough. They wouldn't meet the minimum orders, which is a valid concern. But I could tell how like bummed out they were about it. This guy named Jarvis is the lead singer and the bassist, and he really wanted to get an action figure made. And so, you know, in talking to him and seeing his like excitement and like being so bummed out about not getting an action figure done, I was like, you know what? Like, I make toys all the time. Bigger idiots than me make toys all the time. I bet I can figure this out. And so he and I started working together about 2 years ago. I did the design work, I art directed the sculpt, I worked with some sculptors that I know, and then we started shopping around the project for quotes or whatever, and it was like stupidly expensive. We were just getting these quotes that were astronomically high, like $30K plus for production and everything, which is just insane. And so we kind of shelved it for like a year and a half, which is kind of a bummer because you can tell he was really upset about it. But then a friend of mine who you guys may know is Pete Gorel of Killer Bootlegs, Phantom Star Killer. Good dude. He texted me maybe this was like December. I was like, hey, have you ever heard of this band called Night Demon? They're opening for King Diamond right now. And I was like, yeah, funny enough, I actually like worked on their action figure and never actually, we just never worked it out. And he was like, oh, well, you should use my factory. I was like, what? And he was like, yeah, like I get this many figures for this much money. And it was significantly less than what we were getting quoted before. And I was like, yeah, let's do that. And so got the factory info, talked to Jarvis again, and it was like we were back on track. And like we actually got factory quotes in, and it was like even significantly less than like what Pete was telling us is gonna be. So we're off to the races. And so this is the Night Demon Eugene action figure that we're working on here. This is like an early sample, so like the blister comes off and the frame isn't the right size and stuff, but we've been working on this for a little while now, and it's going to be shipping at the end of the summer finally, which is really cool. And it's kind of crazy how some stuff works out like that, because like when we worked on this 2 years ago, it was just going to be like, we just want to make an action figure, like we just want to do this. But now the album that this art is based off of is turning 10 this year, so now this gets to be part of like a 10-year anniversary Curse of the Dam celebration. And you know, I don't think it could have worked out any better. So it's been really fun to work on. I am on Instagram at Wadaga so good luck spelling that. My last name is pretty wild. It's just WLODYGA Dude. And then my website with my portfolio and all of my work and stuff is wadaga.com. So if you can figure it out, how to spell it once, use it for everything else. So I do think that collecting is something I will be doing for the rest of my life. I think it's an important, at least for me, it's an important ritual of connecting physically with the media and the characters and the IPs that I love so much. Because, you know, a lot of these guys, you know, not a lot of these guys, but almost all of these things that I have here are all fictional characters. Godzilla's not real, Turtles aren't real, Power Rangers aren't real. Like, the only things that are real are like some of these metal band guys, but like I'm never gonna meet them, I'm never gonna get to like shake their hand and tell them what they mean to me. But having these kind of totems or whatever, these shrine, these little mini shrines to these characters that are so important to me, helps me connect with them on multiple levels. And I think that's gonna be part of my life probably for, you know, as long as I live.